Hello and a very warm welcome to a brand new episode of World Panorama, the only show that gives you a 360-degree view of major global news in the most concise, direct and unbiased reports. I'm Sana Khan. Before we get you detailed reports, here's a look at the top stories. Still chance for freedom for Julian Assange. Ecuador grants asylum to WikiLeaks founder. Angry UK says Ecuador's decision changes nothing. Myanmar conflict threatens regional stability even as ethnic clashes continue. Hundreds of homes in Rakhine State annihilated. Heavily armed militants storm Kamra Air Base in Pakistan. Attack once again raises concerns on the safety of Pakistan's nuclear stockpile. And Robin van Persie switches sides to Manchester United in a massive £22 million deal. Arsenal manager admits losing Van Persie is a big blow. Let's straight to the top story. The story in focus this week is the founder of the secret-spilling WikiLeaks website, Julian Assange, who has been holed up in Ecuador's embassy in London for the past 2 months now. On Thursday, Ecuador's foreign minister announced that his country was granting political asylum to Assange. The Ecuadorian official said it was because Assange faces a serious threat of unjust prosecution at the hands of US officials. Now, there have been calls to prosecute him in the US for releasing huge amounts of secret US State Department documents. For now, Assange is wanted in Sweden, where he faces sex crimes allegations, and legal experts say this move will do little to help him avoid extradition there. They say it simply drags Britain and Ecuador into a contentious international face-off, but there are some basic issues that need to be looked at, for instance, freedom of expression and press, of which Assange is perceived to be the defender, and raises questions about the very approach of media, journalism worldwide. We'll try and delve deeper into some of these issues. This week, I'm pleased to welcome Shogun Saxena, Senior Editor with Times of India. Thanks so much, sir, for being with us. But before that, here's a look at this report. Ecuador on Thursday granted political asylum to WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, setting stage for an unprecedented diplomatic standoff with the UK, which has threatened to extradite him to Sweden come what may.
Arrest warrant from Sweden can no longer be affected by Great Britain, in its turn, it means that the Swedish prosecutor, in my opinion, must change her attitude and immediately go to London and interrogate Julian Assange at the embassy of Ecuador, which I have requested her to do as late as 2 weeks ago, but she declined to do that. But now the situation is new again.
Soon after, the decision raised eyebrows within Sweden, and the foreign ministry summoned Ecuador's ambassador. Swedish prosecutors have not yet charged Assange, but they believe they have a case to take to trial, and the lawyer for the 2 Swedish women who made the allegations against Assange said his clients deserve justice.
We have summoned the ambassador because what has happened today when Ecuador has granted Mr. Assange asylum. We are strongly opposing this reaction of the Swedish legal process and also the cooperation, the legal cooperation between 2 European states.
And I think it's absurd that he will get political asylum in Ecuador when the question is that he shall be extradited to Sweden to answer to the suspicions that he has committed rape and sexual molestation. That has nothing to do with asylum in Ecuador.
Meanwhile, London reacted to the decision by insisting that effectively the decision from Quito changed nothing and that it intended to go ahead with extraditing Assange to Sweden.
We're disappointed by the statement by Ecuador's foreign minister today that Ecuador has offered political asylum to Julian Assange. Under our law, with Mr. Assange having exhausted all options of appeal, the British authorities are under a binding obligation to extradite him to Sweden. We must carry out that obligation, and of course we fully intend to do so.
Even after Thursday's decision, Assange's fate is still far from clear. Britain has promised to extradite him and cited a 1987 domestic law as the basis for saying it could strip Ecuador's London embassy of its diplomatic status and enter the premises to arrest Assange. It was unclear how long Assange could stay in the small embassy housed on the ground floor of an apartment block, which is under 24-hour surveillance by British police. And with that, let me go across to our guest. Shogun, what do you feel? Here's a man who calls himself as, internet's freedom fighter, and then this diplomatic wrangling that we're seeing. What do you make of this?
I think the Julian Assange affair has become more complicated. On one hand, a small country like Ecuador, by giving him political asylum, has proved that the country stands for free speech, for human rights, and for transparency in international affairs. Right. But the stand taken by countries like US and UK, I mean, it's very clear that they want to get him at any cost. I think now there are three distinct possibilities before Julian Assange. The first one is if he's given a right of safe passage by the British government, which is highly unlikely, right, he can take a plane and go to Ecuador. That's the first possibility, but it's highly unlikely. The second possibility is that the British police enter the embassy in complete violation of international law and arrest him. But it's quite possible it can happen. And the third possibility, which I think is the most likely, is that he is going to spend a lot of time inside the Ecuadorian embassy in London.
All right. That's a very, interesting development because, again, this Julian Assange, if he continues to stay in the embassy within London, as you're saying, it is more likely, then a whole lot of, questions need to be raised because there are a lot of supporters that Assange has, very crucial documents that he has released in the past. So, do you think that seems to underline the hypocrisy and the self-interest that has characterized international politics? It's all about politics in a, whichever way you look at it.
Of course, it's all about politics. I mean, Julian Assange has done something. He has challenged the hegemony of United States. I mean, you like it or not, United States is like an empire. And by releasing these cables, these documents, I mean, he has shown the dirty side of the American politics, American diplomacy. Right. So obviously they want to get him at any cost. And make no mistake, I mean, let's have no doubt about it. I mean, if he's sent to Sweden, he will be, finally, he'll be sent to United States, and there he'll be persecuted, finally. So, right, yeah, that's the most likely thing to happen, I think.
All right, Shogun, hold on to that thought. Let's hear out some of Assange's supporters who continue to chant for him and wave Ecuadorian flags in praise of the decision that was taken to grant him asylum.
We think that it's a very brave thing to do, and he needs a lot of support, not just now. He needs support every time possible, because he is fighting against USA practically, and we would like Julian Assange to be granted, because he's representing a person who loves true life, freedom.
We're very content with the decision taken. We're very happy. This is what we Ecuadorians wanted to happen, that it would be just.
We support the government's decision, which is a decision taken on the basis of human rights and international commissions that support this type of petition.
It stands for human rights, and it stands for justice, and also it stands for what I call all these bad publicity with and the bad history of journalism. Because I think Julian Assange is now a representative of a journalist that is risking everything in order to tell the truth.
All right, Shogun, you heard all his supporters there. Now, this also raises another very crucial question, the freedom of expression. How far can one go to express him or herself? And now in the age of internet in the 21st century, when, every move can be accounted for, you update your status if you're checking in at one point to the other. So it's very difficult to draw the line in this case. So, a lot of other such cases, which I'm going to discuss with you now, but firstly tell me what is right and what is wrong, who is going to define this?
I think freedom of expression is an essential part of democracy. If you don't have freedom of expression in any society, you can't have democracy. And the way the freedom of expression and human rights have been violated in the Western democracies in recent years, whether it's the Occupy movement or Occupy London movement, people were attacked by police, but it was not reported by the American media or British media in that way. I think that the fundamental right of people to protest and to express themselves and to challenge the system and challenge the powers, I think it's essential part of democracy. If you don't allow that, you are attacking democracy. And that's what's happening in the Western countries at the moment.
Absolutely. In fact, I was just about to point out cases like the Russia, the punk band, they were sentenced for 2 years in jail. Then you have this group Anonymous, which, you know, again, is something, a phenomena over the internet, but the governments are really not happy with how these people are going about it. You know, they're just educating people about the freedom to express themselves. But again, as you mentioned, it's the Western countries that are, you know, blocking that right that people have. What do you see happening in the days to come with maybe many such organizations coming into being?
It's interesting you mentioned the Russian case. I mean, the Pussy Riot pop band who has been jailed in Russia now. I mean, all the Western media and the Western governments are now up in arms, saying they should be released and the case should be re-looked at. And in case of Julian Assange, and in case of Occupy movements, they have an entirely different position. So it shows the duplicity of the Western governments, duplicity of the Western media, that they have different standards for Russia or China, maybe for India, or for when it comes to themselves, they have different standards. You know. So.
Right, it's a tough battle to decide what's right, what's wrong when everything is so politically motivated. Shubhan, thanks so much for joining me this week on World Panorama. Your inputs are invaluable. We head in for a very short break. After that, World Panorama brings you a special report on the ethnic clashes in Burma. That and much more coming up. Thanks for staying with us. 3 women from the Russian punk band Pussy Riot were sentenced to 2 years in jail on Friday for staging a protest against President Vladimir Putin in a church, a ruling supporters described as his personal revenge. Despite Russian president's seemingly soft comment on Pussy Riot, analysts and opposition leaders say he will continue to crack down on dissent.
A Moscow judge sentenced 3 members of the provocative punk band Pussy Riot to 2 years in prison each on hooliganism charges on Friday, following a trial that has drawn international outrage as an emblem of Russia's intolerance of dissent. Lawyers for anti-Kremlin punk bands said their defendant's jail sentence was decided by Russian President Vladimir Putin.
This verdict was decided not in this courthouse, but was decided from authorities above. This verdict is the result of a political decision made in the Kremlin by Vladimir Putin.
The opposition leaders condemned the sentencing.
It is terrible to watch 3 young women placed into an armored cage when they are handcuffed and 10 special security officers with dogs are guarding them. It is total savagery. But this is what Russia is now.
The defendants had said they were protesting against close ties between Putin and the Russian Orthodox Church and did not intend to offend believers, but the judge rejected those arguments. Prosecutors had requested 3-year sentences. The 2-year sentences include the nearly 6 months served since the defendants were jailed following the February 21st protest.
Since June 2012, reportedly 20,000 Burmese Muslims are brutally persecuted, displaced and killed in the name of religion, race and ethnic cleansing. This violence is only the latest chapter in a long history of state-sponsored repression against the Rohingyas. It began when Burma began its project of Burmanization in the 1950s with its lofty aims for racial purity and the nationalization of resources following the end of British rule. Here's a report.
A deadly wave of violence has swept through Burma. The Buddhist Rakhine and Muslim Rohingya have engaged in retaliatory attacks over the past few days in the nation's northwest Rakhine state. Dozens of people have been killed in fighting over the past 2 months. The immediate cause for the unrest was the alleged rape and murder of an ethnic Arakan woman, allegedly at the hands of 3 Muslim men. In response to the violence, a state of emergency was declared across Rakhine. State television said the order was in response to unrest and terrorist attacks and intended to restore security and stability to the people immediately. It is the first time that the current government declared a state of emergency anywhere in Burma. But what's the sectarian angle to the violence? There have been long-standing tensions between Rakhine people who are Buddhist and make up the majority of the state's population and Muslims. Most of these Muslims identify themselves as Rohingya, a group that originated in Bangladesh. In the towns bordering Bangladesh, where the violence has taken place, the majority of the population is Muslim. In this latest outbreak of violence, it is unclear if the Muslims accused of murdering the Buddhist women, or those killed on the bus, or those involved in communal violence are Rohingyas. Overseas-based Rohingya rights groups say that because of the latest violence, Rohingyas have been attacked. The recent spate of violence in the country's northwest makes it evident that Burma's transition is far from complete. The unrest is being seen as a key test for Burma, which saw a quasi-civilian government elected in 2010 after decades of oppressive military rule. The clashes have raised concerns about the fragility of Burma's democracy. President Thein Sein has said that the violence puts the country's move towards democracy in danger. Burma watchers are asking why the long dormant tensions have broken surface at this point in time, when a newly elected government in the capital, Naypyidaw, is winning international approval for the small advances it is making in the areas of political liberalization and human rights. For now, it is important for Burma to be seen as a stable state, but it is always going to have to contend with the fact that it is one of Asia's most ethnically diverse states, and people are watching to see how the government handles these tensions.
And heavily armed militants stormed a Pakistani Air Force base on Thursday, sparking clashes that left 9 people dead and raised concerns about the safety of the country's nuclear arsenal. Pakistan's history of militant attacks on military and security facilities has reinforced Western fears about Islamabad's ability to secure its nuclear program.
Suspected Islamist militants attacked a major Pakistani Air Force base where some of the country's nuclear weapons are suspected to be stored in the early hours of Thursday. Security forces battled attackers until dawn at the Minhas Air Force Base west of Islamabad. At least 8 militants were killed and 1 soldier wounded. Residents of villages close to the base said they heard sounds of explosion in the middle of the night.
At dawn, we heard from the media that terrorists had entered the base. This spread a lot of fear and panic among the people here. But it was good that the Air Force people and the security agencies managed to control the situation in a very short time.
The Pakistani Taliban claimed responsibility for the attack, saying it was aimed at avenging the 2009 US drone missile attack that killed Taliban leader Baitullah Masood. Reacting on the attack, Chief of Indian Army assured that all the air bases and defense installations are well protected.
We have our procedures in place. All the bases are protected. We have protective measures in place. Our SOPs are there, and they are well defended. There is not a problem.
Meanwhile, Indian experts expressed concern over the deadly attack.
When Pakistan's internal security deteriorates, as an analyst, I would say that India should be very, very careful and very alert as to what could possibly happen.
There are a lot of groups which ISI and Pakistan Army don't control anymore, and they want to take over the armed forces.
Pakistani authorities touted the deaths of the militants as ample evidence of country's ability to keep its military installations secure. Nevertheless, the security of Pakistan's nuclear arsenal remains a major concern for the US, given the continued presence of Al-Qaeda and other allied militant groups in the country's volatile tribal areas along the Afghan border. According to experts in the US, Pakistan is expanding its arsenal, which is estimated to number about 100 nuclear weapons.
Time for another short break on World Panorama. After that, a look at the devastation caused in Iran by a powerful earthquake this week. Stay tuned. Watching World Panorama. Time now to take a look at some of the other international news in a quick wrap. Here's Globe Watch.
Republican Paul Ryan got a taste of the rough side of a presidential campaign on Monday when protesters heckled him on the campaign trail in Iowa. The new vice presidential hopeful from Wisconsin mingled with locals at the Iowa State Fair, a popular spot for politicians keen to show their common touch in a state where Obama and Romney will be in tight competition. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation suspended Syria's membership early on Thursday at a summit of Muslim leaders in Mecca, citing President Bashar al-Assad's violent suppression of the Syrian revolt. The move had been approved at a preliminary meeting of OIC foreign ministers and was agreed on despite opposition from Iran. Saudi Arabia has led Arab efforts to isolate Syria diplomatically and has backed calls for the Syrian rebel opposition to be armed. Two powerful earthquakes killed 250 people and injured an estimated 2,000 in northwest Iran, where rescue workers frantically combed the rubble of dozens of villages throughout the night and into Sunday. 6 villages were destroyed and about 60 sustained more than 50% damage. The US Geological Survey measured first quake at 6.4 magnitude. A second quake measuring 6.3 struck 11 minutes later at a similar depth. Beijing insisted that Tokyo immediately free 14 Chinese activists who landed on disputed islands. China has many territorial flare-ups with neighbors, largely over specks of land but often involving possible undersea energy deposits. Japan arrested 5 members of a group of activists from China, Hong Kong and Macau who landed on the island on Wednesday.
And if you've missed the week's biggest sporting events, here's your chance to catch up. We bring you Sports Action.
Manchester United completed the signing of Robin van Persie from Arsenal on Thursday after the Premier League rivals reached an agreement over the sale of the Netherlands striker. No financial details were disclosed by either United or Arsenal, although British media has reported that the London club wanted £22 million for its captain, who has 1 year left on his contract. The Dutchman was the Premier League's top scorer last season with 30 goals, but he refused to sign a new contract with Arsenal, saying he wasn't happy with the direction the club was heading. The Olympic flag made a tour through Rio de Janeiro slums on Wednesday before being taken to the government's headquarters, where it will be kept on display for the public. The first stop was the massive Alemão favela, which became a symbol of the city's slum pacification efforts after the police drove out drug traffickers from the violent community in 2010. Local residents packed the slum's community centre to catch a glimpse of the Olympic flag. Wade Carl Peterson, riding momentum from his good form at the PGA Championship, fired a flawless 80 under 62 for a one-shot lead after Thursday's opening round of the Wyndham Championship in North Carolina. Peterson, fresh off a tie for third at Kaiwa Island in the year's last major, had 8 birdies to sit one shot clear of American David Mathis and South African Tim Clark at Sedgefield Country's club.
And now for all the very latest news from the world of movies and lifestyle, here's our entertainment wrap. After ending his Olympic campaign in triumph, Jamaican sprint king Usain Bolt celebrated in style by turning DJ at a central London nightclub. Bolt fittingly brought the London Olympic to a spectacular end when he anchored Jamaica to a world record of 36.84 seconds in the 4x100 meters relay. Action movie The Bourne Legacy with new star Jeremy Renner raced to the #1 spot on the US and Canadian box office charts with estimated sales of $40.3 million over the weekend. Bourne Legacy is the 4th movie in the spy franchise that previously starred Matt Damon and has grossed nearly $1 billion around the world. Former Friends star Jennifer Aniston is engaged to marry her actor and screenwriter boyfriend Justin Theroux. Justin Theroux received an extraordinary gift on his birthday when Aniston accepted his proposal of marriage. Aniston and Theroux have been dating for more than a year and appeared in the comedy Wanderlust in February. In his first official appearance since his rumoured breakup from Kristen Stewart, Robert Pattinson hit the red carpet in New York City to promote his new film Cosmopolis on Monday. Pattinson joked about how he felt about the self-proclaimed Rothcest fans waiting for his arrival. In Cosmopolis, Pattinson plays a ruthless billionaire on a journey to self-destruction. The Grammy Museum unveiled an exhibition featuring Whitney Houston's gowns and costumes in Los Angeles. Notable items on display include her white beaded gown worn at the '94 Grammy Awards, outfits she wore on various tours, concert posters and more. Over the course of her 30-year career, Houston established herself as one of the most admired and influential singers of her time. The exhibits will be on display through February. That's all we have for you in this edition of World Panorama. I'll be back next week, same time, with more world news. You can join us till then on Facebook at facebook.com/WPRSTV, and our Twitter handle is @RSTV News for the latest world news. This week, we wrap up remembering the king of rock and roll, Elvis, who died 35 years ago, leaving a legacy that would influence legions of other musicians around the world. Goodbye and thanks for watching. Jumping and the drum began to swing. You should have heard the knocked out jailbird sing. Let it rock. Everybody let it rock. Everybody in the whole cell block was there to do a jailhouse rock. Spider Murphy played the tenor saxophone. Little Joe was blowing on the slide trombone. The drummer boy from Illinois would crash, boom, bang. The whole rhythm section was a purple.